Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the Summer Fashion Summit, AI, Retail, and AI. AI and Retail. My name is Martu Freeman Parker. I am the Managing Director of Mana Fashion, and we would just like to welcome you to our first summit with Paraiso in the tent for Swim Week. We would like to thank everyone for coming out. I would like to hand it over to Ms. Matilda Kay.
Welcome, everybody. It's lovely seeing some familiar faces and some new faces. Thank you all for taking the time. My name is Matilda Calavesi. I'm the Director of Brands with Mana Fashion Services. Welcome to our panel on what I consider is the fascinating intersection between artificial intelligence and fashion. Now, in recent years, the fashion industry has undergone a remarkable transformation driven mostly by technology. From design and manufacturing to marketing and sales, AI has reimagined the entire fashion ecosystem, bringing forth unprecedented opportunities, but also some very intriguing challenges, wouldn't you say? Today, Mana Fashion Services proudly hosts this panel of esteemed experts who will shed some light into this evolving landscape and discuss how technology is kind of reshaping our industry. So before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and have our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll start with Julie.
Thank you, Matilda. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So I'm Julie. I'm like a fashion tech aficionada, let's put it that way. I have decade experience in fashion. I was leading 300 million budget at Inditex, so I was working for both Zara and other brands of the group. And then I went on to leading 600 million budget as a corporate product strategist. So let's say I have seen firsthand the inefficiencies in fashion retail. But I always knew that with technology we could do better because like in any companies, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's only when the product hits the store or goes online that we really discover whether consumers are going for it or not. So I was always thinking we can do that better, and that's why I pivoted into technology. So I founded a company in AI, so it's called Sustalytics, and it predicts what will sell, basically. And since like late 2022, we've started incorporating as well generative AI in our services. So we have a portfolio of services that use AI from design to delivery. So I'm very much excited to have this discussion, and I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you for having me.
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Menino. I'm currently the director of the Artificial Intelligence Centers. At Miami-Dade College, we have a couple of centers there. And I'm not really in fashion so much, but I'm a neuroscientist by training. I did my PhD at FAU and just very passionate about the intersection of neuroscience and AI in education now that I'm at Miami-Dade College. And I have a background in philosophy as well, and so I teach AI ethics, responsible AI at Miami-Dade College as well. And that's a little bit of me.
All right, thanks so much, Michael. Ed Johnson, I'm a partner with Deloitte Consulting, and I'm in the consumer industry practice where I lead what we call the heart of the business capabilities, sales, marketing, innovation, and customer supply chain for clients in retail, consumer products, travel, hospitality, and leisure. And what we do as an organization is help our clients solve problems they can't solve on their own. Right, that's kind of the role of consultants. And right now, the number one meeting that we're getting, and the number one type of project that we're doing is AI transformation. Whether that's transforming retail operations, thinking about food science differently, using generative AI to simulate food recipes. I've got tons of examples, but every boardroom in America is talking about this topic, and we're usually somewhere behind that, helping clients figure out what it is they want to do with AI and how they want to transform their business. So really excited to be here and share some of those nuggets with all of you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Baxter. I know a few of you out there in the crowd from my time as the Chief Merchandising Officer at Macy's. I spent about 27 years living through the consolidations of the department store industry until it finally became one company at Macy's. I left Macy's in 2017, and since then I was the CEO of a small contemporary brand company called Delta Galil Premium Brands, which was Seven for All Mankind, Splendid, Ella Moss out in Los Angeles. And most recently, I was the CEO of Express. And now I am spending time with all sorts of interesting people trying to figure out what's next for, not just for our industry, but for me. So I'm happy to be here with all of you.
So we have a wealth of knowledge just between all of our experts here. So we're excited to get started. Before we do, I had put together the diagram here, which hopefully some of you can see. And the purpose of this was to show all of the touch points as it relates to AI and fashion. Now, when we think of touch points within AI and fashion, we think of design, we think of mid-journey, but there's so much more to that. It can drill down to a store layout, a consumer experience, something that's tailored specifically to you, not your demographics or psychographics, but you as an individual. So there's so much that is being done and will be done within the realm of AI as it pertains to us. So we'll get started, and we'll keep this on as kind of a little web of what is happening and what's to come. So we'll start with Michael, Dr. Menino. Okay. Now, the term generative AI has been used quite commonly in the last 2 years. However, it's important to distinguish between that and narrow AI, general AI, and super intelligent AI. Can you tell us a little bit what the differences are?
Well, let's start with AI.
Yes.
Let's start with it. It's a huge buzzword now. Everybody should think about what AI means to you. I personally think now, because of what's coming with AI is a mindset. It's not only a discipline and a skill set, but it's also a mindset. And there's this notion of AI literacy. But AI in general is getting computers to perform tasks that humans typically do, and sometimes to perform them better. And that's what narrow AI is, right? Everything that exists in terms of AI right now is all what's called narrow AI or weak AI. It's AI just doing one specific task, right? Like unlocking your phone with your face, or driving a car, or playing chess, or recognizing a pattern. Things that, it's a one specific cognitive task, right? Recognizing a pattern, making a decision, language translation, that's generally what's meant by narrow AI. Even generative AI is a case of, in my opinion, you might get differing opinions with different experts in AI, but is still a case of narrow AI. Generative AI is AI's ability to generate new content, right, in the creative space, let's say. So the output of generative AI is fresh. It's often surprising. It's unexpected. It's new. It's creative, right? That's opposed to unlocking my phone with my face, which is facial recognition. That's not generative AI, right? That's narrow AI. And there have been generative AI before, but with these so-called large language models, which was released, to the public in November of 2022 with OpenAI. They were created before that. What happened there in terms of like AI history is we had this new kind of algorithm. It's a new kind of AI architecture called a transformer that just exploded onto the scene with this idea of generative AI. So general AI, or strong AI, or artificial general intelligence is not narrow AI. That's general AI, or artificial general intelligence. That's AI that can do pretty much anything that a human brain can do. That's not only recognize patterns or make decisions, but it can be creative. It can be intuitive. It can help you make decisions. It can be empathetic. It can understand, like, for example, I see a lot of you nodding your heads right now. That's something that I recognize, that you have mental states. AI can't do that. Like these large language models like ChatGPT, it doesn't truly understand what it's doing. It's just predicting the next word. Okay, so there's not really a deep understanding of the external world. It doesn't have its own goals, right? You give it the goals, and then you define the output, and then you get the output. With general AI, which is some people like Elon Musk and Peter Diamandis think we could get in the next year, then AI will have its own goals, right? It will have its own desires and wishes and things like that. And then finally, superintelligence, right? There's artificial superintelligence.
Yeah.
And the joke is that once artificial general intelligence, or AGI, comes, it's going to be gone already, because it will be so smart with one human, then it will build itself, right? And so that's one of the fundamentally different things about AI in terms of any other technology that humans have created. AI can create better AI. Like nukes don't make better nukes, right? The internet doesn't make a better internet, but AI can make itself better. And when that happens, we'll get artificial superintelligence, and that will outperform the most brilliant minds in any field: fashion, chess, anything like that. And that's like the combination of all human brains together will be artificial superintelligence. That probably is very there's so many different opinions about like when this thing is coming. I'll give you one thing though. When ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, they thought AGI was going to be 50 years away, and then you had 3.5 come out. That error went down to about 30 years. And then ChatGPT 4, and then 4.0, which was just released. Now, if this error rate continues, there's some very interesting empirical data that we might reach artificial general intelligence between like 2026, or between 2026 and 2030, and that's very concerning, but also exciting.
I think you covered it. Concerning and exciting. Yes, absolutely. That was great. Thank you for explaining that. I think that also sets the tone in terms of what we're talking about and the differences between everything. We'll continue with you with one more question, Dr. Menino. Now, I know you are the head of the AI Center, the director at Miami-Dade College. What are some of the initiatives underway to educate fashion professionals about the AI technologies out there and their potentials? Because one of the things we hear, or the narrative we hear, is that although technology is available, the workforce might not be trained to use some of it, right?
Yeah.
So from an educational perspective, what are we doing or working towards?
Well, AI at Miami-Dade College, at least, we have a very horizontal approach, an AI for all approach that is democratizing AI, because Miami-Dade College, our president likes to say we democratize education. So we're democratizing AI. In the future, you're not going to have jobs coming online which require AI PhDs or master's degrees. So we develop these, what some people have called blue-collar AI, even though these jobs that AI is going to be taking over are actually white-collar jobs, so don't get confused. But in other words, applied associate's degrees in applied AI or a bachelor's degree. We just launched this program, which we have the first associate's degree in the state of Florida in applied AI and the second in the nation here in Miami. The bachelor's degree is the first in the state of Florida as well, no, that was the first, and then it'll be the second in the nation. We have 2 college credit certificates. So what we're doing is taking a very horizontal approach. So we have AI in healthcare, applied AI in healthcare. We have applied AI in business. So one of the things I think would be very interesting is for faculty professional development to see, okay, if you're teaching, I don't know what courses you teach in fashion, but
Fashion buying.
fashion buying. Okay, so what is the intersection? How is AI going to be relevant in this particular subject matter, in this particular domain, right? So having faculty understand that and then teach that is one thing. But then also in terms of like curriculum development, we can have an AI in fashion course, which we can absolutely build. I was mentioning that to you earlier. But I think in terms of like this term of technological unemployment, there is a big concern about AI taking jobs. Were you gonna?
Yeah, that was
were you
my
gonna
next. So I think you should continue. Yes,
Okay,
that was
I
my
don't know.
follow-up question.
Okay.
So you got to it.
that like led right into like what's going to be in the fashion industry. There is a very real concern that, and there are studies that AI is going to take away jobs. There's going to be job displacement. There's going to be job replacement, and so on. A huge study came out from MIT about like what are these skills that humans need to focus on to be able to keep jobs, and how there's going to shift and be reframed and so on. And white collar jobs are under the gun here. But I would say we should focus on augmentation, not replacement. Right? How is AI going to augment a lot of these mundane and repetitive tasks that humans do, so then people can go and focus on higher, creative, strategic, things. Even in healthcare, like an AI can help doctors analyze medical data, so that you can then go be more with the patient and treatment planning and so on. So I think that's one thing. And there's a lot of evidence that AI will create jobs. We shouldn't be as worried as all the headlines, in my personal opinion. Every time you have new technologies come online, even something as fundamentally different in human history as AI, there will still be a lot of job creation, a lot of different kinds of data scientists, AI ethicists, AI trainers, and so on. So, and I think the third point is just in terms of like lifelong learning and reskilling is so important to understand how to use AI, faculty to use AI in their lesson planning. You have this concept of like skills, of like learning how to learning a language, but then there's this idea of meta skills, right? What I call meta skills, learning how to learn, right? Things like resilience, anti-fragility, creativity will be so important in the future in terms of like the changing economic landscape of AI.
Absolutely.
Can I
Well
just add
said. Yes.
Just to add something there, Michael, I think the idea of augmentation is a really important idea for all of us in the fashion industry to think about. Because I do think that I've experienced myself as a leader some reluctance of people to sort of engage in artificial intelligence because of this fear that ultimately it could do their job better than they can do their job. I'm on the advisory board of the Fashion Institute at the Wharton School, and I was able to actually attend a really interesting panel where they invited IBM and Watson, which is their AI, and they talked about it in the medical industry. And I think taking it out of our industry helps us understand augmentation. And what they said was, how many of you have ever had, a scan of some sort, and they tell you that it'll be 2 weeks before you know what the result of that scan was? Because they're waiting for someone, a technician or a doctor, to look at the scan. And then they're waiting for someone else to say, yes, I agree with what that opinion was. And they were describing that the speed with which they're able to treat people is and these were doctors saying, no, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened, because now I can treat people quickly. In addition to that, if you have a doctor, right, a doctor is constantly educating themselves and learning, and there are constantly new medical studies. That doctor only has the ability to absorb X amount of those things in X amount of time, where AI, Watson, understood that in real time. If there was a study that was published someplace in the world about breast cancer, Watson knew all of those results at that exact moment. Not only that, it could look at the scan of millions of patients and match, and then look at the treatment for each of those patients and see what the best result was, and then help the doctor actually.
Should be called augmented intelligence.
Yeah, because I think so. I think these were doctors talking about how AI has absolutely revolutionized their own experiences in treating their patients. And so I just think that's a really important thing for all of us to think about, and taking it outside of the industry sometimes helps. So I think we in the fashion industry have to think, okay, how does it augment what we do? And that's what Julie started with, which I think was brilliant.
I'm like, can I bounce on that? So I'm going to talk about generative AI in fashion, because I met so many designers, and so I speak at events about that, and I had a friend, she was like, no, like, I don't want to go to your event. It's kind of like generative AI is killing my job. So I want to address this, generative AI that's why when you said augment, I was like, exactly. No, it's giving you a new strength. And so I read about this metaphor of the painters. You know, back then for painters, when photography came out, for them it was like, this is the end for us because we will not be able to do it as well as them. You know, they were actually focusing, you know, on having the utmost realism. But actually, photography is what kind of emerged new movements like the impressionism, the expressionism, because then they didn't have to focus so much on like being, you know, on realism. So it was kind of like a new era. So in fashion, I feel like generative AI is a new era of creativity because this way, instead of spending so much time on each design, on like bringing like some concepts to life, it's going to take you hours to do that. And in just a few seconds, you will have a team, a boss, who is going to dismiss that design. And you will have spent hours doing that. So I feel it's like now you can focus on augmenting your work, like your creative mind. You have kind of a partner to help you do that. So I feel augmenting is the right word. Yeah.
Ed, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I would agree with my esteemed panelists. We try to break it down into simple language. We call it the age of width, as opposed to the age of, oh my God, everything's coming to take my job. And I usually start these sessions similar to this with a game that no one knows about called Buzzword Bingo, where everybody has a bingo card and they check it off as we say the buzzwords, and you crush bingo for everybody. Because you demystified, I think, a lot of what's going on. And you know, I work mostly in the food industry, and the analogy that I always use is all of these different components of AI, whether it's machine learning or computer vision or generative AI or predictive analytics, you name your forum, it is an ingredient. The recipe is how you best do that business process using those pieces of technology to make that outcome more accurate, faster to come by, or more precise, right? And the use cases that I see right now in retail have a lot to do with precision and a word that I use all the time in my work, granularity, which says, I'll give you two examples. One is a 9,000 store retailer that until last year, they had, basically they had three price zones: expensive stores in Manhattan, middle America, and then lower income stores. And 9,000 stores were mapped to basically one of those three strategies. And they operate across 40 some categories, extreme high-low promotions, right? So buy one, get one week, and a very high price the next week. And over that, over this time period that we've been working with them, we've been rebuilding those zones to more match the role that the store plays in the neighborhood, the economic background of that store, and even the demographic profile of the store, to start getting the right items on shelf, getting the right price points, understanding should they match against a big box competitor, should they match against Amazon, but doing all of that with AI, right? Because the reality is they have 10,000 SKUs in 9,000 stores, and a human can't set all those prices one by one. What the human is now able to do isn't manage price in spreadsheets, it's manage business rules and strategy up front that then is passed into the engine that is comparing that strategy with the predicted outcome of different price points and different promotions to then set the prices and to even set the item allocation on shelf. And we haven't displaced a single worker for this organization in doing that. We've basically, we've raised the roof, created more oxygen for people to focus their time on, extreme, value add tasks. That's one example. I think another great example in retail is the concept of clienteling, which luxury fashion brands are very, very good at, right? If I think about Burberry, or I even think about Nordstrom a little bit, and how they know and even Lululemon, once you tell them your name, once you give them your email address, when you're in the store, the associate has on their iPad, they have so much about you. They know how to suggest things to you. They know, oh, would you like to just ship that to your store? Oh, would you like me to ship that from our other store right to your house? Like, they have all of these apps, and that whole world of clienteling is also changing by applying AI, because those suggestions are just becoming more and more rich as these models learn more and more about who we are as consumers. And I know we're going to talk about consumer data in a minute. So as those models learn more about who we are as consumers, they can help those associates sell more consultatively and in a way know the customer better than they do today. And I think those are just two really, real examples of using AI, not displacing any workers, and changing the nature of work. And that's, I think that's the exciting part of the future.
And I think when in my roles, in my past roles, one of the greatest frustrations of the people on my team has been the amount of time that they spend doing analytical work, and it prohibits them from actually being able to be strategic and being able to move the business forward in the way that they want. So I think this idea of augmentation is really an important one. It's not about displacement. It's about efficiency and predictability and all those things.
Absolutely, that's what I was going to say. I mean, if you start a career in retail, specifically buying, you start as an associate or assistant buyer, and your job is basically Excel files with like 9,000 plus SKUs, and you're checking pricing, and you're checking SKU description and number, and there's a human error component to it. It's not very inspiring in any way, and again, time can be utilized for...
And it's probably not what you went to school to do.
Absolutely not.
Well,
Manage Excel spreadsheets, right? Not what you learned in school, right?
Right.
And so the idea is that
Yeah.
as we evolve the education to match the business process reimagined by that technology, people can actually do the things that they're passionate about.
And I think there's always been a fear of technology, and I'm going to say something now that will age me. But I've already said how long I've been in the industry, so I guess I've already aged myself. When I started in this industry, which was in 1991, after I graduated from college, we didn't have computers. We didn't have email. We barely had voicemail. And when I bought product at a trade show like this, I bought quantities. I worked for a small department store chain, Famous Bar, which was based in St. Louis. It was a division of the May Department Stores Company. For all the old folks in the room, you'll know. And we had 30 stores at the time. And I bought 240 units of anything that I thought was really great, and every store got 8.
How's that
And
for
when
planning?
when I actually wrote the order, I did it by hand, in triplicate, 8888888. And you just mentioned Excel. Well, the predecessor to Excel was Lotus, 123.
I remember Lotus.
And I will tell you that we merchants back then were so adamantly opposed to anything that thought that they could do an allocation better than we could. We're not going to use the spreadsheet. I do it by hand. And I erase when I make an error. So I think there's always been, the point is there has always been a reluctance to embrace technology. I mean, I'm talking about a spreadsheet, which at the time was technology. And we all had a reluctance to embrace that because we thought we could do it better. Or we thought that it would take away the job of the allocator or the jobs of the people down in the merchant service center who entered all of those handwritten sheets into a database. So I think it's just a great example of embrace it. Embrace it and think about how technology is actually going to help you do your job better.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Just piggybacking on that, I see you have here. I don't know if people can see it, but one of the things in this mind map is AI agents. And I just want to comment on AI agents really quickly because we're entering this world now of AI agents, which is large language models, but then you give a large language model external data, and you give it a tool, and you give it access to your data and other things, and you get an AI agent, which can help you do tasks, right? So imagine, you get a flat tire, the AI agent could then search, where there's a help, and then make the call for you on your behalf, right? Without you having to make the decision yourself where to look. So these are this idea of AI agents, which are now coming online. They're already sort of well defined, right? Yeah, and so you have you can make your own agents now, and what Claude just actually released, which is another large language model. So that's That's also really interesting.
And again, just to make that specific to retail or to fashion, consumer companies now are building agents to help the sales force. And by the way, generative AI doesn't just refer to building pretty pictures in Midjourney. Generative AI can be used to build code to query databases. And so I have a couple of clients that have used a ChatGPT-like interface to help them prepare materials as they go sell to Walmart and to Target. And they do that by typing in a chat prompt. I want to go sell this product to this customer, to Target. Talk to me about the relevant Target consumer trends. Size the opportunity for Target based on my sales data and history with Target, and prepare a PowerPoint presentation for me to go present to the buyer at Target.
That's incredible.
And in the matter of 5 or 10 minutes, that whole process takes place. And the generative AI is in two components, right? One is that analyst or that buyer, or sorry, that salesperson never has to query the data lake to pull the Target sales history and to map the product into it and to figure out what the value could be. That's all being done by code that is being generated by large language, SQL code that's being built by a large language model. And then the second component, obviously, is like actually the process of storytelling is, in those instances, we've overlaid kind of a gold copy or what we think a best-in-class sales message looks like, and then the model is populating it with the specifics of the product and with the specifics of the customer. So it's like that's better with, right?
So, can I bounce on that?
Of course.
So of course, like here we're talking big companies, and I know, like for example, Meta, L'Oreal, all of them, they're building their own AI. So there's all the internal information that is kind of confidential to the outside world. But so you go into that company and imagine you have your own ChatGPT for any question that you have to learn your new job, all of that. So I think that's game changer. As a small business, I also want to kind of empower you and tell you you can actually have that for yourself. Like I was just saying, I have my own agent. I talk, and basically it will write emails for me, and then I'm like, just make it fun and professional, and it will send it immediately. Because you can actually do it yourself. Like this is available to everyone, and I want to say again, bounce, like don't be scared or don't think it's only for like big companies. And yes, generative AI can be not anything you need, but you tailor it basically.
I tried Copilot recently. I wrote an email and a little button in my Outlook said, proof this with Copilot. I pushed the button and it came back to me and said, you might want to consider being a little bit nicer in this message. I was like, I'll never use that button again.
I actually just saw an article. So we have smartphones. The big thing that is coming in terms of trends of AI is when AI gets integrated with these smartphones. They're calling them IntelliPhones. IntelliPhones, where again, Siri. It's like think about Jarvis, right? From Siri can prompt you, right? You're not prompting the large language model for output, but it's going to prompt you and remind you, and then do a task for you on your behalf. On your phone, right? And it's going to be completely ubiquitous and democratized. All these mini AI systems that are going to be with us doing everything.
It's incredible. How are we feeling? Do we feel like it's overwhelming? I think the one thing when I first met Julie, she's very good at kind of making you feel like AI is for everyone. And she digests it, or she explains it in a way that's very digestible and attainable. Because you always assume big corporations have the funds, have the workforce, have the talent, have the technology to do it. But what about me? I'm a small swimwear brand, or I'm a small resort brand. What can I do? So we'll pivot to that with Julie now. Can you tell us how can AI be utilized to enhance the creative process? Kind of from ideation to production, let's say.
Sure. So I'll focus on the first part of the supply chain and fashion. So I'll say designing, deciding, and then producing. So I feel the designing, I've already touched base on it. Generative AI tools. So I would use it to kind of accelerate this process, because as I was saying, it takes you a long time to generate some designs, and then you see those designs, and in a split second, you have already decided. So here you can totally accelerate this process using generative AI. We can talk about tools after, but I'll go on the next one, which is deciding. So when I built my company, I always thought about huge companies because that's where I come from, and I was always compelled because it was just actually just a few people who were deciding on huge productions, and it's only when it got into the store that you were like, oh yes, they're loving it and I miss quantities, or they hate it and like, what do I do now? And so that's why I created Systelytics. So to make it easy, it's just consumer insights. We show designs to consumers and we gather that data. It's kind of like if you have some people for dinner, you might want to ask them if they're vegetarian instead of, serving meat. You have to think of it that way. It's exactly the same thing. But obviously, we leverage AI, machine learning, and visual recognition to make that easier. So that's how we know really easily little details like a hot pink will sell in Italy, but it won't sell in France, or a hat will sell better with a pom-pom. So all of that AI will make it easier for you. And then the third part would be production. You can also use AI in everything that has to do with your production, because here, like, I touch base on like waste and how we produce stuff that people actually don't want. But even within the production itself, you can use AI, for example, for fabric cutting, to make sure there's no wastage, because that's also another huge problem in the fashion industry. That's why we also partner with sustainable production partners like Groyo to make sure that we use AI in everything we do to optimize. So again, it's to augment, it's to empower, and really to make sure that you have the time to focus on your creative skills, on your strategic skills. So those are just like, I want to say, the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, so let's keep on because you touched on this. Can you give us some examples of AI-driven tools that actually help designers? I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of them. And how can they be utilized in a more digestible way, I'd say?
So again, I'm going to focus on stuff that you can go home and use, that are accessible to like everyone and anyone. So my favorite one for generative AI, so for creating like images, is definitely Midjourney in fashion. So here, hands down, for me, they're like the best so far. But I know they can look a bit intimidating, like the console is intimidating. They've had updates since then. So you can try it. Basically, all you need to do is imagine and just write imagine, and then whatever you imagine. So this is called a prompt. But if you still feel that this is too intimidating, another easy one is Stable Diffusion, and it's the most famous in the fashion industry because it has an API. So an API is like a bridge. So many like companies actually use their API, so they kind of offer their services through that. So to give you an example, Clip Drop. If right now you want to be like, yeah, but Julie, I want to just go on it now, you go on Clip Drop, and it has an API to Stable Diffusion, and it's super friendly, super easy. Here you just have to write your prompt, and that's it. There's no like technicals. For example, Midjourney is really good because they have a set of codes which can really accelerate the whole process, so you can really, go a step further.
Hey, Julie, can I just jump in? My 5.5-year-old writes Midjourney prompts with me. So
There you go.
it can be done. He likes, he loves monkeys in the forest. He'll say, Daddy, like, let's draw some pictures. I type, imagine, and it'll be, two boys walking through the forest with their pet monkey, and just generate thing. And he knows how to ask me to, so if that's not demystifying, I don't know what is.
I agree. Thank you. And then the last one that I think you've all heard of would be DALL-E. And DALL-E is accessible via ChatGPT. So really super easy. Personally, in fashion, DALL-E is very much kind of like a painting. I think it was trained on art. So I'm not the biggest fan in fashion. But that said, it evolves every day. So it already evolved. like things like generating text on images, they have really improved because this is one of the key limitations. There's still a lot of limitations, at least when it comes to generative AI for the fashion world, I would say.
So you guys got those down? Did you write them down? Good. Okay. Ed, let's move on. Now, we understand that AI is technology and evolution, right? What are some current case studies you can share with us? And how do you foresee case studies change in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm not going to predict 5 to 10 years out.
Okay,
Because the space is moving, faster than Moore's law. So, not going to happen. But in terms of the here and now, I think Julie's examples are spot on in terms of how AI is being used in the, call it, upfront creative process and design. I would also posit that things like Midjourney or those types can be used to augment existing creative. So again, using my son as an example, he'll draw a color pencil sketch. We'll take a picture of it and then use Midjourney to set that picture in motion or to create variations of that same picture. So it's a designer could do the same thing, right? I just watched the new look and I saw those sketches that Cardine and others were making. Well, like those sketches can be then rendered into almost 3D models using this technology. So I think those are beautiful upfront use cases. A big one post design that is probably the most popular and scaled right now is in the area of forecasting. And so Tim gave his examples of every store got the same quantity. Fixing that problem by using the store level sales data, the store level customer attributes, the product attributes that work, or that are associated with the products that are selling, and then building models of demand that work at that level. So just, real fashion example, a couple of years ago, we were kind of peak inflation. A year and a half ago, we were at peak inflation. I worked with an athleisure brand that is very proud of their why we made this concept. And we took the tag, the content of the tag, why we made it, to use a large language model to create a database of product attributes. This legging had extra stretch. This shirt had anti-stink. This yoga mat was made of cork, whatever it was. And then we correlated that against the sales data to understand which were the attributes. When you looked at it, not from the lens of the color necessarily or just the style, but what was it about the product that, as communicated to the customer, made it sell. And so that idea of attribute-based forecasting works for products. It works for customers too, by the way. It's the same reason that some of us get offers from certain retailers and others might not. It's because in their database, they've put some attributes around you and they either view you as high propensity to buy more or you're about to churn, and we want to make sure we convert you and make you loyal. And I think that area of forecasting and the next best action on the back of that forecast is probably the most popular right now. It's the one that is maybe the least obnoxious to the customer. You don't really notice it. Like if the price changes a little bit, or I get one extra email, or I don't get the email, you don't really notice. But it's kind of changing the way that those business processes are happening. And then the other one that's big in fashion is obviously virtual try-on, and almost the concierge of the purchase. And I think where this is heading is people will upload their own inventory of things, right? Whether it's the colors of your jeans or the colors of your tops, and the wardrobe will be built around you. Or you upload your pictures and your lifestyle preferences, and the agent is advising you on what to buy. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I bought these glasses, and they were the product of an online interaction where I uploaded my prescription. I took a picture of my face with the credit card right here so that it could measure the distance between my pupils. It asked me why I wanted new glasses. I said, well, I wear a lot of browns. I run. I want the glasses to not slip off my face. And I run outside, so I want them to be photochromatic. And I got 10 options from a custom eyewear company in Austin. And 10 days later, I had the frames, literally. Like was mind-blowing to me. Never had to go to the optician for dinner this week. This is how many people I'm cooking for. This is the inventory I already have, recipes, and then what items to go buy that you're missing from your current inventory is what's populated into the list. And so that's the use case that we're building right now with the big grocery store. So you can see the same kind of concept being applied to fashion quite easily.
That's fascinating. And Tim, I'm sure you.
Well,
Yes.
I could piggyback on every single thing you said because I think it's all so relevant for our industry and where we need to go. I'll go back to inventory optimization for a moment because I started with my example of 8 in every store. But, that was 30 plus years ago. And while I think we have improved as an industry in inventory optimization, we're still so far from optimizing our inventory. It's like insane. And it starts with
What gives it away? The markdowns in every store?
right. It starts certainly with the product, which Julie talked about, but it's also allocation. It's also understanding the consumer in that particular market. Yeah. And omni-channel has exacerbated this huge challenge. We still, I think, as an industry, while some are better than others, certainly in omni-channel retailing, we still struggle with how much of our inventory, how much are we going to buy, right? So we struggle up front with what that forecast is, how much are we going to buy? Then we struggle with where are we going to put it? Is it going to go in a fulfillment center? How much is going in a fulfillment center? How much is going in each one of those stores? How many of you have walked into a store and been frustrated because and there are some really examples that I won't share because I won't name names, but, where you walk into a store that was once your favorite store to shop and you say, well, the reason I'm going to buy online is because there's nothing here in the store for me to buy, right? So we're missing a consumer that actually is in that store because we haven't allocated the merchandise properly to that store. And that's just an enormous, enormous challenge. And then a step beyond that, one of the greatest frustrations when you're in the store and you can't buy it, you don't know what size you want to order. Right. And that's that whole virtual try-on that becomes so important as the consumer does continue to shift to that online space. Being able to have certainty that what you're going to order is going to fit you and that you're going to like it and it's going to be suitable for your lifestyle and what you wanted it for. 100%. So.
And that plays up into the whole sustainability aspect because what happens then is we order a couple of sizes. As we know in the US, there isn't one size run or one size chart that's nationally applied. So then every brand produces or makes garments based on their own size chart. So then we purchase 2 or 3 garments, we try them at home, we return most of them, if not all of them. So then the cycle continues, then we have returns and
I thought my wife was the only one that did that.
Right. I gave it away. Everyone knows now.
Typical consumer behavior.
Okay, Dr. Menino, how is AI being integrated with neuroscience?
Finally.
To basically gain a little bit more insights into consumers' psyche. Say.
So you all mentioned about what consumers want, right? And there's no better understanding behaviorally, even like more systemically, data or objective data on what consumers want than understanding what's going on in their mind, right? And what's going on in their body and their brains. And so there's a whole field of, actually we were speaking about this earlier, you were talking about forecasting. There's actually a field of research called neuroforecasting, which is really interesting. And a study actually just came out like 2 months ago. They were using machine learning to be able to forecast with 98% accuracy what song will be a hit just by looking at their brain data. It's incredible. So there's a field called neuromarketing as well. So you understand like consumers' preferences and tastes, right? Not by what they say and what they do, their behaviors, but by what's going on in their brains. And now it's like, you don't need to put people in scanners anymore. There's so many consumer devices out there. There's actually AI, like computer vision and natural language processing that just using the webcam and the microphone can collect all of this rich data about your emotional state, your cognitive state, your brain waves, or what's going on, just by just by computer, just by camera and the webcam. But there's all kinds of devices now on the market that are coming out every week that you could go buy for a couple $100 that people wear all the time. And in fact, a book just came, and they can give you all this rich information. A book just came out about like 6 months ago by Nita Farahani out of Duke University called The Battle for Your Brain. And all of this objective brain data is now being pushed out into the world. And it's becoming very concerning about like what, there's a lot of ethical and responsible issues there. But once you have that really interesting data, you can get highly personalized. And so that's really the whole point with AI is, right, it unlocks you can't unlock my phone, but I can unlock my phone because it's so personalized. Same thing with Netflix. It's highly, highly personalized. You can get down to that level. When you have even more rich biological data about you, where your eyes are moving, your blink rate, all these kinds of rich information that gives us all information about psychophysiology, then you can really get uber personalized. And that becomes very rich information for consumers, but for consumer preferences, but also for companies as well. So it's that's a little bit of a concerning time. I mentioned that book, The Battle for Your Brain, but it's also a very exciting time as well, just to put on the other side of the coin, right, about the influence, the intersection of neuroscience and artificial intelligence. It's pretty powerful. And it's permeating every field, including fashion. Right?
It's incredible.
By the way, I wanted to make one extra point if I
Yes.
could. Julie, you were saying something earlier, and I just don't want to let this thought go. All of these interesting tools. To take that thread to the next step, you have people now, like Sam Altman, like Elon Musk, just like a bunch of AI experts saying that in the next couple of years, we will have companies where it's just one person or two people, and the company's generating $100 million revenue. $100 million in revenue a year, just one person or two people. That's the end of it, right? Like if you have people who really understand how to use these tools, not only in your personal life, right, but in your business life, it's going to be like, think about that. In a couple years, we're going to have one person unicorns or two people unicorns.
So we can look at that and be terrified, but we can also look at that and kind of realize that we can accomplish so much without all of the manpower, without all of the financial backing that everyone's kind of trying to put together when a new idea comes forth and a new company wants to be built. So I guess there's two sides to that coin, right? Starting small and growing small. Tim, now we talked about inventory management. What other benefits have we seen utilizing AI in the supply chain management? Because I know we've kind of used AI in supply chain for decades now, and it was more of a narrow AI aspect of things. How has that changed?
Well, I think like everything in our industry, it has evolved, and certainly the use of AI within the supply chain has evolved. And I think, we've already talked about a lot of it. I mean, I think the supply chain obviously starts with the idea of a product, right? It's the very beginning of the supply chain. So, when I think about the supply chain, I don't just think about logistics, and that last mile of how you're getting it to the customer. That's all a part of it, but that's, right? So everything from inception, creation of a product to last mile to the customer is a part of the supply chain. And so I think the way I'd answer that, Matilda, is this chart that you put together, which I think is fantastic. And you said it could be overwhelming. And I think that all of this is a part of supply chain. Whether it's the inventory optimization that we were talking about, we haven't even touched on logistics, really, and how we get product from where it is produced in a faraway land to the consumer. There's so much on this screen that we haven't talked about, and so much of that actually goes into supply chain. And I think one of the biggest opportunities for us within supply chain is actually connecting all of the dots. I think the way we started with you describing exactly how narrow everything is. The reality is that today, each one of those boxes, in a way, has its own sort of AI, right? And its own sort of application. And I think we as an industry will win when we start connecting all of those dots. So it's not just what is the product that they are going to vote for, what is the best seller, or what is their new favorite song, but where does it need to be? How do we get it? How do we produce it most efficiently? Where does it need to go? How do we reach the personal? How do we personalize our message to be sure we reach the actual consumers that want it, et cetera, and then get it to them? So I think it's actually, the opportunity for us in the fashion industry is to embrace this, but also to think about the end-to-end sort of supply chain, and how AI can help us with efficiency. I said to Julie when I met her earlier, Zara, I think all of us in the fashion industry have looked at Zara, and have aspired to be Zara, right? How do they do it so quickly? I walk into that store, they have what I want, they know what I want, but how do they get it to us so quickly? And I think that AI can help all of we older retailers or brand new retailers get to the model that Zara has sort of mastered.
So I'll bounce on that.
Please.
Actually, I worked for Zara and the Inditex group for 4 years, and I evolved in that company. I became head of buying and design. But I think the true secret is their logistics.
Yeah.
It's not about their products. And I'm sure you have noticed, you will go in one Zara and you will not have the same product as in the other Zara.
It's not 888.
Ever, right? Even when you're in Spain and you walk
No.
2 blocks and you're at a new Zara and it's a completely different assortment.
No, everything is tailored. You even have sometimes like special production for some countries. And this is the way I built Systalytics, my company. It's because I've learned that from them. So everything we do, everything we analyze, when I told you hot pink, it's a true story. Hot pink will not sell in France, but they love it in Italy. And we have so many examples like that. We have companies who use our services. The product already exists. Here, they're just trying to find out in which country they should send it to. But you can do that up to the store, and Zara do that up to the store, up to the size. So, this is the true secret. And so whenever they have excess inventory, what they do is that we call that centralized, because they own their logistics, they can bring the stock and then redistribute it wherever it is. So for example, when it's sale, actually, just so you know, they have specific stores where they will centralize the merchandise, and you want to know those stores because that's where you're going to find all your sizes. But this is the way they work. This is kind of the secret.
Well, it's remarkable, though, because they're actually also one of the few retailers that has extraordinary success in stores, fashion retailers, that has extraordinary success in stores, right? Yeah. And actually less success probably online, or different.
Well, I mean, compared to their size,
correct.
they've improved,
exactly.
But compared to their size, it's ridiculous,
right.
Honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Annette, I'll pass it on to you. How is Deloitte helping kind of this side of the business, helping brands analyze data at this granular level to get to the likes of the Zaras of the world, where the right product is at the right time for the right customer at the right price, the right quantities?
Yeah, we offer a lot of services around, we call it data enhancement and data enrichment, but maybe taking a step back, data fuels all of these models, right? And so as organizations are on the journey from manually doing orders in Excel to working with someone like Shopify to having their own consumer data platform, we help them on that migration. We've got a number of clients that we've stood up on Shopify and others that we've done custom Adobe consumer data platforms for. I'll tell you something shocking. Publicly available data on every single one of your credit cards and everyone in this convention center is available today. Something else shocking. We buy that as Deloitte. We have a database of 200 million households in the US alone where we get merchant day level records by household. Wow. So we know how much you spent yesterday at Zara and how much you spent yesterday at Neiman. We don't always know what's underneath of it. And we buy it because you opt into that when you get your Citibank
without
MasterCard, probably without knowing about it. The credit bureaus score that data, they put it all in the same format, and then they do what's called syndicate it back. Well, why do we buy that? We buy that not so that we know what we're spending, but so that we can predict what might be interesting to you. And so one of our core services in this space is taking the sales records of one of our clients, a Macy's, Neiman, you name it, matching on literally your name or your email address or your phone number in the database that we have, and doing, again, augmentation, to use that word again, of what the retailer already knows with everything else that's out there and publicly available. And I'll just, quick sidebar, it's not always just that credit card data. We do, we buy geolocation data. We take Strava profiles, Instagram profiles, LinkedIn profiles, and we unify them all around a common ID, a common consumer ID for 200 million people, just in the same way that an agency would. But we do it usually on the retailers, in the retailer's environment, so that they have access to all that segmentation. And then many times we help them build campaigns. We help them design new products that are intended to hit certain attributes or certain parts of the population, estimate the sales throughput of a new innovation against those ideas and concepts, and even sometimes just to support an action that they already have. I worked with a footwear company a couple of years ago, and they wanted to flagship brand. Their one shoe is 25% of the revenue. They wanted to raise the price above $200 for the first time ever, and they said, we think we have three types of consumers. We have fashionistas, we have mall walkers, and we have people who like this shoe because it's made in America. With those three attributes, you can probably figure out the shoe company. We matched their sales data to each one of those three audiences by individual, and then when they launched the next version of that shoe, the hero image referred to what that individual used the shoe for. And that claim substantiated, or that ability to do that improved loyalty, lowered the price elasticity, and ultimately they launched the shoe at the higher price point. So it's just an example of using these concepts. And clearly we didn't do that manually. We did that through automation. And then, we mentioned large language models, and, everyone has access now to ChatGPT, et cetera. The blending of internal company data with publicly available data is a tricky subject, right? And so, at Deloitte, for instance, I'm not allowed to use ChatGPT, and I'm not allowed to upload client confidential data to ChatGPT. So what we did in January was we launched our own internal version of ChatGPT based on the same base large language model. It's called Deloitte Sidekick. In 2 months, we got 1 million uses in our organization. 1 million Deloitte employees using this, uploading their own documents to it. And that kind of, I call it semi-private large language model creation, we're doing a lot of. Because everyone wants to keep what they know secret and still get the benefits of the public knowledge base that's out there. So those are just some examples. I could go on all day, but not a sales meeting.
Fascinating. I mean, we can stay here another hour, you guys. There's so much. We barely scratched the surface, but I think we're nearing the end of the panel. I would like to open it up for questions if anybody has any. Yes. Can you?
Probably need a mic.
Okay, I have 2 questions, but before I want to say that Zara does an amazing job with their app. The shopping experience is just mind-blowing. I go in, I scan, they have a scanner, I scan, I can see what it looks like. I don't have to go to the fitting room. I put it on my wish card, and it says USA market only or Italy market only, and I know I need to buy it now or I can wait later. And then I send everything to my house, and it's like such a breeze. So, thank you and your company for making that experience amazing.
It's not me anymore, but
Well, somebody started it a few years ago, probably you. Okay, and then my question is, one, the legalities. So I'm a brand strategist and consultant, but I used to be a designer, so I can understand both aspects of the fashion industry in terms of creative and the business part. My concern is, for example, when you buy a print, you spend maybe $750 to have the exclusive right to that print. Now I can save my clients a lot of money where I go on pattern.ai and we generate prints. But how do I know that that print is exclusive to me? And how does the law catch up with that, keeping that? That's my first question. The second one is I love the idea of, you said augmented AI, which I think will work maybe better in other industries than the fashion industry. The fashion industry has such a high overhead that I think one of the first things, and I could be wrong, but when I talk to my old CEOs and my old founders and owners of companies, the first thing they want to get rid of is the creative team. That's how they save their money. I think after 2008, we were not necessarily seen as a creative mind and creative direction anymore. We were seen as CAD machines. So now that machines can really do our job, I am not sure why any CEO or CFO would want to keep us around. So I feel like in the fashion industry, we are going to be displaced, which you have to learn to pivot, but sometimes creatives, it's hard to pivot because it's not just a job for us, it's actually oxygen, how we like to generate. Creativity is something that, brings joy and happiness and purpose to us. So I feel like that could, we're looking at it quite technical, but there is a sociology and psychological aspect of how it could affect society that I don't think a lot of people are considering. So I guess one, the legal part, and then two, how do we in the fashion industry try to prevent this displacement?
So I'll start, but I'm sure you have a lot to bounce on as well. Those are all great concerns. I'll just start with your last point. So before, designers, they had to draw by hand. And then, then you had to learn how to draw on the computer. Think of it, it's the same thing. You want to learn how to draw using generative AI. It's the same story, but you will always be relevant. So, get started and they will hire you because you know how to do that better. But now comes the question of is it really mine? Is it really my work? And so this is a whole new gray area. So in that field, I try to follow, but it's really hard to follow everything. But for example, there was a lawsuit, I think last year, for the Meta Birkin. So it was creator, I'm doing little cats. If from far away it looks the same, it's the same. So you have to think like a human being, maybe, and think that way. You inspire yourself already from pictures, from shopping. Generative AI is the same thing. It was trained on different art. So from this, you generate and you iterate until you get something. So, yeah.
I actually think the creative process has so much to benefit from the application, but there's still such a need, particularly for brands, to maintain their standards with human intervention and judgment. A couple of months ago, I was getting ready for a pitch at a beer company, and we were using Midjourney to create a bunch of imagery for our pitch. And one of them was making this brand more relevant to college football fans across America. And we used our social database and found this cohort of people that like to have kids, that like to go to parks, that like to watch college football on the weekends. And the ad that was created showed an 8-year-old chugging a beer in the park, like an 8-year-old girl. So an example of you need some human, imagine if that was just automatically executed via some campaign management program. So you need human judgment to be overlaid on top of that.
Good example. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for a great panel. I'm sure across everybody you've experienced things with different sizes of companies, sub-$1 million per year revenue companies, all the way up to the big folks. What percentage of a yearly budget do you think a company should be spending or investing in AI? Thinking about the little folks, sub 100,000 a year, all the way up to the big ones.
I'll give you the big company answer. We're spending about 20% of our earnings. So we could be making as partners 20% more, but we're reinvesting 20% of our earnings into AI.
Wow, it's a big number. And for the smaller, barely starting out brands.
That's such a hard question because I kind of want to say I spend it all.
Yeah.
But I think I'm your worst example, but probably why I'm speaking in that panel, because I think they're also relevant and I want to use them all. So my opinion, I have no limits because it will change the way you work. You will gain so much from it that you cannot imagine. So, yeah.
Well, think about what Michael was saying. Michael was saying you could have a $100 million company
Exactly.
you, one person. So I think
your chief marketing officer,
right.
your chief product officer, your sales team, right? All of these, in terms of entrepreneurship, right? All of these things can then, with AI agents, and then when ChatGPT 6, which they just started training the ChatGPT 5 model that was announced, that's gonna be a game changer in terms of the amount of money that you actually spend, whatever kind of size company you are. I think we'll see a trend probably in more and more companies spending more and more. And if it's just one person doing all these things, then maybe you're not the outlier. You're actually an example of the future norm. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to you guys for coming on a Saturday and giving such amazing information to everybody and sharing your experience and your expertise in AI. I feel like if we were to do this again next year, the conversation will look a lot different. I think the examples will be different, and I think we'll have a better sense of what's to come. Thank you, everybody. I think Martu is going to wrap it up for us.
Thank you, panel. You guys blew my mind. I am so concerned, but in a good way. I just redid my whole future for the next half of my life. So we have a gift certificate for everyone in the audience here. We have one gift certificate for the lucky person for the Standard Spa for $250.